So imagine you're walking down a completely empty road at night. You hear a sound right behind you. Naturally, you turn around, but there's nothing there, just the wind. But then, right next to your ear, a voice whispers, "You will not escape." Now, this isn't just some campfire tale we're talking about today. This is a very real, incredibly chilling phenomenon that literally paralyzed an entire community, and that is exactly what we're going to unpack right now.
Welcome to today's explainer. Today, we are breaking down a phenomenon so terrifying, it didn't just freeze the isolated village of Bhairavpur in fear, it actually went on to inspire iconic pop culture horror across India, like the legendary TV show Aahat. We're going to dive into the data, the timeline, and the psychology behind a terror so profound, it completely altered the reality of every single person living there. All right, let's get into it.
Section 1. The Abandoned Havali, Heart of Bhairavpur.
To really understand this, we have to anchor our explainer around one specific Hindi word, ahat. It roughly translates to an unseen presence, a soft sound, or approaching footsteps. You know that feeling of sheer anxiety when you're anticipating something awful? That's what this is. It preys on our most primal, universal fear, which is the fear of the unseen. It's not a monster jumping out to grab you. It's that dreadful, creeping knowledge that something is simply there.
And that brings us to the setting of our story, Bhairavpur village. It's incredibly isolated, super quiet, and dominated by this totally deserted, ruined haveli, like a traditional mansion. We're talking broken windows, crumbling walls, and a very strict, unspoken rule among the locals. You do absolutely not go near the haveli after dark. Honestly, just the wind whistling through those ruins was enough to keep the whole village away. But, as we're going to see, being isolated definitely doesn't mean you're safe.
Section 2. Whispers and Footsteps, Categorizing Terror.
When we actually map out the victims, their everyday jobs, and what exactly they saw, a really terrifying pattern emerges. Look at how this breaks down. A student sees an extra shadow. A barber sees a glowing figure. A villager sees a woman in a black sari, and a bus driver sees a faceless man. The visual manifestations were super personalized, completely diverse, but the underlying phenomenon, the ahat, that inescapable feeling of being followed, was identically terrifying for every single one of them.
Okay, so the crucial point of origin here starts with a teenage student named Reena. And it's a classic inciting incident, right? A dare. Her friends dare her to go inside the deserted haveli. She brushes it off, says ghosts aren't real, and walks right in with just a flashlight. But when the beam hits those ruined walls, it reveals a second shadow. There's her shadow, and then there's something else's. She bolts, obviously, but the approaching footsteps she hears, they don't stay in the haveli. They follow her all the way back home, triggering this lasting, deeply personal haunting.
From there, things escalate fast. The phenomena started bleeding into the daily routines of everyday villagers. Take Raghu, the local barber. He's walking home late one night and gets stalked by this white figure with glowing green eyes. It literally terrifies him into a state of madness, where he just constantly mutters, "The Ahat will take me." Meanwhile, you have Savita, who's just doing her normal evening routine of lighting a lamp in her courtyard. Suddenly, she's approached by a messy-haired woman in a black sari who whispers, "Someone is coming for you," right before blowing the lamp out. So the visual horror is really ramping up here.
And the craziest part is, it didn't even stay inside the village borders. Omar, a driver who ran the local bus route, was driving his completely empty bus on the super isolated stretch of road late at night. He casually glances up into his rearview mirror, and sitting in the very back seat of his empty bus is a man in white clothes with absolutely no face. Amar completely freaks out, pulls over, and checks the back. But the seat is empty. There's no one there. But the very second he sits back down in the driver's seat, a hushed voice right next to his ear whispers, "Keep driving. The final destination is with me." That undeniably chilling interaction right there, that was enough to make Amar quit night driving for good. The haunting had officially moved out of the village and claimed the roads. Section 3. A Village in Terror. Community-wide panic. Let's look at how this builds, kind of like a snowball effect. It starts in phase 1 with the teenager's dare, the catalyst. Then phase 2, it spreads to the general villagers. Phase 3 is where it gets really fascinating because the entity starts actively targeting the skeptics and anyone trying to fight back. Finally, the disruption is so massive it forces phase 4, official police intervention.
The Aahat basically conquered the entire psyche of the village, systematically, step by step. As the terror pushed into Phase 3, rational thought and traditional protections were just rendered completely useless. Anirudh, the deeply skeptical village schoolmaster, he starts hearing heavy, invisible boots stalking him on an empty road. Then there's Mohan, who actually attempts to cleanse the Haveli using sacred mantras and prayers. He watches in absolute horror as his protective wards just fail. Instead of peace, bloody text violently manifests on the Haveli wall, straight up declaring that escape is impossible. The tension in Bhairavpur is at its absolute breaking point now. Enter DCP Arvind. He's a highly rational, logical police officer who honestly just laughs at ghost stories. He decides he's going to go in and debunk the myth himself. But, well, his investigation completely shatters his skepticism. He walks into the ruins with just a torch. First, he hears heavy footsteps on the stairs. Then, a physical manifestation. He actually feels an unseen heavy hand clamp down on his shoulder. And finally, a whisper directly in his ear tells him if he wants the truth, he has to go to the basement. His own physical experience forces him right into a final confrontation.
Section 4. Descent into the basement. Final confrontation.
So, a team is assembled. Reena, Ankit, Anirudh, and DCP Arvind. They gather at the stroke of midnight. Together, they push open this massive, heavy, rusted iron door at the back of the Haveli, and they descend. They're walking down into a pitch-black, freezing, mossy basement that just reeks of damp decay. You can literally feel the suspense here. They're walking right into the belly of the beast. At the center of this damp, forgotten basement sits a broken bed frame, and right behind it, scrawled violently in blood on the decaying wall, is this terrifying message: "This is my curse. Whoever hears it will meet their end." It's this sudden, visceral, jump scare moment in the narrative, confirming without a doubt that they have found the source of the evil. Section 5. An unending curse, the tragic lore. As they stand there in the dark, a blurry white shadow manifests right in front of them. This is the big reveal, guys. The entity speaks, revealing herself as Lalita, the original owner of the Haveli. 100 years ago, driven by just absolute, immense greed, her husband brought her down to this very basement and buried her alive. Her muffled screams, her agonizing attempts to escape, that is what birthed the eternal footsteps and whispers. This century-old act of profound cruelty is the actual source code of the village's terror. And uncovering the truth? It doesn't bring peace, it brings fury. Lalita's ghost issues a terrifying warning: "My curse is endless. Even those who know the truth cannot escape." At that exact moment, the physical environment just reacts. The basement violently begins to shake. Dirt starts falling from the ceiling. The aha echoes from every single corner, above them, below them, near, far, forcing the terrified investigators to scramble back up those stairs and literally run for their lives. They manage to escape, but they desperately need a solution. DCP Arvind relies on an extreme but logical strategy to try and break this supernatural hold. Step 1, burn the entire Haveli down to the ground. Step 2, the belief is that the intense fire will reach Lalita's buried remains, effectively cremating her and freeing her trapped soul. And step 3, conduct a massive collective village prayer to restore spiritual balance. And you know what? It actually seems to work. The Haveli burns, the prayers are said, and for the first time in years, the village of Bhairavpur sleeps peacefully. Or so they thought, because here is the grim truth that this explainer leaves us with. Days after the fire, Reena is sitting completely alone in her room studying. Suddenly, the temperature drops. A familiar freezing wind sweeps through her room, and from the darkest corner, she hears it, the slow, deliberate sound of footsteps approaching her. Burning the physical anchor didn't work at all. The Aahat had survived. It had detached from the ruins and become this omnipresent shadow, forever latched onto those who had heard it. Which leads us to a final, very unsettling thought to wrap up today's explainer. The lore of Bhairavpur tells us that the Aahat isn't just a ghost stuck in a house, it's an auditory contagion. It's an unseen shadow that, once heard, follows you absolutely everywhere, pacing just outside your field of vision. So take a moment right now. Listen to the silence in your own room. If the Aahat is an unseen shadow that follows you everywhere, who is standing behind you right now? Keep learning, stay curious, and hey, maybe keep a light on tonight.